Welcome everyone to another episode of Things to Say with Kevin J. Today I'm going to be looking at an interview on the PBD podcast of Dr. Jordan Peterson. And I chose to do this one because I think this gentleman has a lot to teach us. And watching this interview, there are a lot of takes that you may or may not agree with, but I think it's good to exercise your mental capacity and make sure that there is something that you're learning or hearing other perspectives from, people who you might consider intelligent. Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist, and he used to be, I'm not sure, but he used to be a professor at the University of Toronto, and he's a popular guy on YouTube now. So let's go into it and see what he has to say on this interview.
First, and that was really good and seemed to provoke a lot of outrage in the predictable places. And
we need more of that, though. We need more
we're
of that
going to
outrage.
We're going to get more. So I don't think we're going to have to wish for that. That's just going to happen. And then I've done 7 tour lectures so far, and with an average audience size of about 2,500, and they're going great. They're unbelievably positive. Almost everybody dresses up, which I think is really cool.
Really?
Yeah, well, when I went out on tour in 2018, before I went out, I thought I wanted to do this like 100% right, or at least as close to that as I could manage. So I went out and bought some expensive suits, and I spent way more money on, this is one of them actually.
You look great, by the way.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you. Way more money than I ever thought I'd spend on clothes, and I really felt quite bad about it. I thought maybe it was an extravagance, but I thought, no way, man, I'm going to see if I can nail this dead on, and I'm going to be speaking to, 100,000 people. I'm going to look as sharp as I possibly can. And one of the consequences of that has been that young men in particular come to the lecture tour dressed up in suits, 3-piece suits. Or the couples come and they're dressed up like they're coming to a wedding. So that's really something. And
why do you think that is? Is it because you set that
they're
standard?
Sick acting like kids.
Okay.
Our whole culture pushes the idea that teenage life, or even childhood for that matter, but teenage life is some sort of pinnacle, and then everybody dresses down so they look, especially men, they look like overgrown 10-year-olds, and there's something extremely demeaning about that. And so to provide people with the opportunity to...
Yes, this is very interesting in particular. A lot of people do not look at some of the things happening in society. So what he's saying there is that a lot of people think that it's okay to, not have pride in how you look, especially as a young man today. What a lot of people don't realize is that because of what is being pushed onto our children in society, we have lowered our standards, and nowadays being proud of how you look and distinguished looking people, they are looked down on, and this is something that's not good for society. So essentially that's what I think he's saying. Well, let's go on to hear what else he has to say.
Dress up in a classic manner and to look like adults, to present themselves in that manner. There's something very attractive about that, because we haven't done that in our culture. That's been, I would say, downplayed in importance or for certainly since the 1960s.
Who's to blame for that? Because you recall, anytime you would fly in an airplane, if you see old school pictures, people would dress in 3-piece suits to go on an airplane. This is in the 60s, I assume. And then now you see someone like Mark Zuckerberg wear a T-shirt to give a speech in front of a TED Talk or something like that. So
well,
who's to blame for this dress
some
down?
of it's just fashion. Fashion moves around, and it usually drifts from the top down. And so when formality becomes the norm, but that drifts down, say, to the working class, then the upper class thinks, well, we can't do that because that would, associate us with the unfashionable people. And then they dress down. And so then that drifts down the hierarchy.
And this is another thing that is quite important as well. unfortunately, you're judged based on your appearance. And as he said earlier, that people from the upper echelons of society, they will look at how other people carry themselves and not want to associate themselves with that. So picture yourself going into the corporate, dressing in a manner that you're used to, which is, dressing down to look like the cool person while you're trying to get this corporate position. And because of the negative outlook on certain appearances, then you get judged based on that. And before you can even say the first sentence, you fail to get the job, on first impression. So that's how it is, unfortunately. So we have to tell our children, and that we have to live in reality and make sure that we are prepared to get the outcomes based on what we do.
So there's some of it's just fashion, but a lot of it too is this idea that this sort of reflexive, rebellious attitude that anything that violates traditional norms, or even anything that's associated with patriarchal oppression and adulthood, is to be eliminated in favor of what's hypothetically a more free individuality, but it's not, because everybody looks the same. I was in Washington 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer than that. It's probably longer than that, when I first went in the summer. And one of the things that really struck me, all these people wandering around these great monuments, is all the men looked like overgrown 10-year-olds. They looked exactly like their kids, except they were bigger. They looked like they'd been inflated with a bicycle pump. And I thought, this is weird that adults are dressing like children, and not good. And so some of it's fashion, but some of it's also that.
Is it exclusive in America? How about in Canada? What have you seen all over the world with this?
No, I don't think it's exclusive to America. I think it was more noticeable to me in Washington. And I think that's when it really hit me, because Washington is, in some sense, a place of pilgrimage. And people from every class go there, and that's a good thing, and they should, from every economic class. And so it was like it was a real cross-section of the total population, and that was one of the things that struck me quite bluntly. And so
one thing I can definitely say is that although you might have a certain set of standards in a particular culture, with the advent of internet and social media, we have become somewhat of a one-world culture. So whatever you see happening, particularly in the US, you can expect that, it's pretty much going to spread everywhere. So it's not surprising, even though he's from Canada, he's speaking in general to the different places. He's talking about Washington, D.C. and what it's known for. But the thing is, the spread of this one world culture will continue to happen. And so we, as parents and individuals, have to be mindful of that, be aware and make sure that we stick to our standards.
Anyways, it's very nice to see all these people dressed up. And
when you hear the argument being made, it's the following argument. The argument is, look, you only have so much energy to make so many decisions throughout your day. Do you want to be in front of the closet in the morning, picking and choosing what suit I'm going to wear to tie with what shirt and what tie? You know what? I'd much rather not consume my energy thinking about what outfit to put together. It's a lot easier to just have a white shirt, jeans, regular tennis shoes, and go to work, and let me make the bigger decisions while I'm running the company. I've never felt bad not wearing a suit. Every time I've had a suit on, I felt better than just walking on with a t-shirt on, even though the t-shirt is a lot easier to do. It's a lot easier, even when you were in the military. It felt good having your greens on, having your BDU on. There was something very attractive about having a suit on. Not for the audience, just even for yourself. Mm-hmm. You felt good having a uniform on. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I talked to my father about this years ago, because he always wore a suit when he was a teacher. He's still alive. He's a teacher, and he always wore a suit. And I asked him why one day, and he said because it was his way of showing respect for the students. And I mean, I'm not saying that everyone who doesn't dress in the suit is being disrespectful, but there's something about outfitting yourself for the task at hand. And there's also something about attempting to put some effort into putting your best foot forward. And I don't really buy the it takes more time in the morning argument. It takes a bit more time, but once you...
I heard something that Patrick said just now, and how you look is a lot, it goes a far way. And the reason I say this is because let's take, for example, you're going on an interview. When you dress a certain way, a particular way that makes you feel confident in yourself, you're going to exude that confidence. And one important thing when you're doing an interview is to make sure that whoever is interviewing you gets that feeling of confidence, trust, competence. Wearing a suit, by giving you that feeling whenever you're responding or in a conversation, that will come across to that person and will give them that feeling, which is most important into, getting the job, or getting people to listen to you, getting that respect. So on his, to support his point where it's showing respect for the students, where he said his father was a teacher, it definitely will give that feeling. And once you give a feeling towards your students, towards your interviewer, that you respect them, that you're confident that you can deliver, then that will give you the ultimate outcomes.
Like before I went on this tour, I went through all my clothing and I tossed out everything that didn't fit, and which included a number of suits that were old, and I had to organize them, and that took about a day to get my closet in order. But then from then on, it's actually a pleasure in some sense.
Do you do it yourself?
Do I do?
Meaning, like, you go through your closet, you do it yourself. Like, Pat has a very unique way of, like, you don't pack anymore, Pat, do you? Like, you have someone kind of help you out with that.
Packing is not my strength in my life. I have a lot, that's one of my weaknesses.
No, I still did that for the tour because I had to figure out what I was going to wear. But I've had people help me make clothing decisions, let's say. Now, it's often people who would like to make suits for me. So I have that as an advantage. But I did that pretty much on my own. And anyway, we were talking about the tour. It's going extremely well, and so people come and they're dressed up and they look good. Not everybody dresses up, but everybody looks pretty good. And
I like that. I like when you go into a room and people are dressed up. By the way, just for the audience, just so you know what topics we'd like to cover with you today. Number one, we'd like to cover what a fantastic job your leader is doing, Trudeau, and I know you're a big fan of his. We'll cover him a little bit with the truckers on what they got going on up there in Canada. Two, we'll talk about what happened with Whoopi Goldberg. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on what should happen to her with the comments she made about the Holocaust. Some of the stuff that's going on right now with John Hopkins today, report came out talking about how great of an idea was the shutdown, and no one's talking about it. They said it was 0.2% effective. Love to get your thoughts on that. Some issues with the governor who came out with what they're doing was transgenderism, Governor Noem.
No, this guy is really good. He does a wonderful job when he's interviewing his guests. And what he's doing now, he's laying out the different topics that he intends to talk about. But I wanted to just focus on what Jordan was saying earlier, to show that this guy definitely has some good insights. And, I've always learned something from watching his podcast. Now, PBD podcast is also a very popular one. You can go over there and subscribe to their channel. And, so what I want you to take away from this is that, a lot of attention needs to be paid on, how our children are taught to present themselves and to take pride in themselves. This is very important, and it goes a far way. Although we hear all the times that we should not judge a book by the cover, unfortunately that's how it goes. The book will be judged by the cover, which is society. They will judge you based on how you look. And nobody's going to just accept you how you are, regardless of how you behave. They will deal with you according to how you behave. So this is something that's very interesting. But just let me know what your thoughts are. Don't forget to put your comments in the comment box, like, subscribe, share, and let's start the discussion. And go over there and check out PBD Podcast. Thank you again for watching, and see you soon.